الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. Amma ba'du, my dear brothers and sisters, we are on the in the class of Al-Ibad al-Rahman, or on the class of the living Islam, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it something that is of benefit for us, because as I have said many times before, Islam is a practice. It is the name of a practice. It is not the name of a philosophy or a theory, and any practice is only as good as it is practiced. It benefits those who practice it, and it does not do anything for those who do not practice it. We are not ethnically Muslim. We are not Muslim as or because of our race. We are not Muslim because of our color. We are not Muslim because of gender. We are not Muslim because of nationality. We are Muslim because of belief and our willingness to live by that belief. And if we want to benefit from that belief, and that is the purpose of believing, is to benefit from it, then we have to live by that belief. We have to practice what we profess, and the benefit we get will be in direct proportion to what we practice. My brothers and sisters, that I mentioned in the last class also, that it's a reality of our lives that what we talk about becomes real for us, and what we do not talk about, no matter how real it may really be, seems like a fantasy. A good example is global warming, which is literally a classic case in point. So is the looming water crisis. I don't know how many of you are aware, but water is now being traded on the stock exchange in California as a commodity. So you can buy futures. It's in Islam it is not permissible, but I'm saying that in California they have water as one of the futures trading commodities on the Californian stock exchange, along with oil and gold. Talk about global warming. I think I mentioned this before, and I want to say it again. It should be one of your. There are two extremely important documentaries that I think they should be required watching or required reading, required study in all schools and colleges. And I strongly recommend that you watch both of these. One is called The Four Horsemen. Four Horsemen. And the second one is An Inconvenient Truth. An Inconvenient Truth. These are two documentaries that you absolutely must watch. Talking about Inconvenient Truth, The Four Horsemen is a documentary which is about the global economic system, the global finance system. It talks about how money works in this world, and how the way money is used in order to enrich the wealthy and to impoverish the poor even more. And it's something that is absolutely critical to watch, because Islam comes with a system which is the opposite of that. Enrichment of the poor, and the wealthy being custodians of wealth and being people who will support the poor. We're not talking about impoverishing the wealthy. No, we talk about supporting the wealthy, not allowing them to be predatory in their accumulation or acquisition of wealth. And there's a very beautiful result of this, which is that the overall economy, the size of the economy will grow. The whole point of this is that the more we have poverty, the more we have a disparity of income, the smaller becomes the size of the overall global economy. Because if the size of the economy is to be defined by purchasing power, by the ability to buy, then obviously people who are below the poverty line can't be counted in that. So you may have a population. This is one of the classic mistakes that a lot of multinationals made and continue to make going into countries like India, for example. They go purely by population figures, by demographic figures. And they say that there is a population between the ages of 20 and 60. There are so many people, and therefore this is the largest, within quotes, middle class in the world, and therefore it is the largest economy. It is not, because it's not a question of how many people are between the ages of 20 and 60. The question is, what can they buy? How much of discretionary income do they have? How much of disposable income do they have? How much of discretionary spending do they have? If they want to buy something, do they have the money to buy that thing? Because if they want to buy something and they do not have the money to buy it, then just having those people as warm bodies doesn't help, right? So, for example, the size of Switzerland as an economy is much bigger than the size of countries whose population is 50 times that of the population of Switzerland. Of Sudan, for example, if you go to Somalia, for example, if you huge populations, but the buying power is almost nothing. Whereas it takes Switzerland, and Switzerland's buying power is enormous because of the number of people who have the money, the discretionary spending money, the disposable income that they have. So Four Horsemen talks about how the whole economic system is geared against this. It's geared to enrich the wealthy at the expense of everybody else. Now, as I'm explaining to you, this does not make any sense whatsoever in any way. But may Allah protect us from ourselves. I don't know what happens to the wealthy people of the world, what happens to their just natural intelligence. What are you going to do with the goods and services that you provide if nobody is there to buy it? If the number of people to buy it is progressively becoming less, which is what is happening in the world, poverty is exploding. Poverty is our single biggest calamity. Is not war. It is not COVID-19 by a long shot. It is poverty. Poverty is what is destroying us, and whether anyone likes to accept it or not. But poverty is not seen as a killer. Poverty is not seen as a destroyer. Similarly, global warming. There are many scientists who are of the opinion that we are already over the top. We are already, as they say, we have gone over the edge of the cliff and we are falling. So I don't subscribe to that, because if I did subscribe to that, then I wouldn't be talking to you. There's no sense. If we are absolutely destined and bound to be extinguished and extinct, then there's no sense in talking about it. So I don't believe that. I believe we still have a chance. And anyway, I am a great believer in the fact that as long as I am alive, I have to do something worthwhile and useful. So I'm continuing to do what I think is worthwhile and useful, which is to try to encourage people, to give them hope, to strengthen them, and to help them in any way that I can help them. So my point is that these two films I want you to watch, An Inconvenient Truth and this. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because we're talking about what we talk about is very real to us, and what we don't talk about becomes as if it is a fantasy, even though actually it may be extremely real. Now, both the economic system, poverty, and the danger of poverty, as well as global warming, believe me, they are more real than you can ever imagine. They're absolutely critically real. But ask yourself this question: do you turn off lights in your home? Do you turn off fans? Do you worry about carbon, about your carbon footprint, about carbon emissions? Do you worry about using air conditioning unnecessarily, for example? Do you worry about any of these things? Because all of these things contribute to global warming. You don't do that because we hardly ever talk about global warming. What are you today concerned about? COVID-19. COVID. Because the constant talk is about COVID. We have ticker tapes on television talking about COVID details. Constantly, the conversation is how many positive cases in this country, that country, how many people died, and so on and so forth. So, COVID has become more real than it actually is. I'm not saying it's not real, it is real. Please do take precautions. Please wash your hands. Please wear masks. Please maintain distance. Please stay away from crowds. Don't go into enclosed spaces. Please don't have dinner parties and whatnot, including now in masajid and so forth. Again, we are going back to March 2019 dates where we're saying now only 25% of the capacity, and so on and so forth. But the point I'm saying is that the reason why that COVID is so real to us is because we talk about it so much. Whereas global warming and poverty, which are truly speaking much more dangerous than COVID can ever be, these are far more dangerous. Yet we live in the world as if these don't exist. Now, why am I talking about this? Because this is not my topic today is not the environment. My topic is living Islam, and the reason I'm talking about that is that this is the situation with our akhirah. If we look at the akhirah, if we look at life after death, just think about this and say, I want you to do this as a little experiment, as a pad. Keep a pad handy and write down what you talk about throughout the day. You don't have to write the entire conversation. Just take notes so that you remember. Don't change anything. No praise, no blame. Just record what happens in your life. And then in the night, sit down and see what is mentioned. See what you wrote on this pad, and notice what is it that occupies your attention, your emotion, and your energy the most. And then ask yourself what, in your view, is the effect of this on your life, right? So when you're writing things down, write down and say, well, how many times do I mention the dunya? How many times, for example, do I mention my job, my education, maybe some issues of the family? How many times do I talk about politics? How many times do I talk about COVID? How many times do I talk about the global economy, the stock market, whatever it is that we talk about? And also see how many times do I talk about the qabr, the grave? How many times do I talk about Jannah, Jahannam? How many times do I talk about standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on His arsh? How many times do I talk about that I will be called before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer for what I did or didn't do, what I chose to do and what I chose not to do? Just think about this and say, just write down all of this, right? And don't see, you can only fool yourself. I mean, you can write down a list in which you are only talking about life after death, but then you know that is not true. So be real, be truthful to yourself, because this is for yourself. You're not going to show this to anybody. Just write down and then ask yourself, how many times did I mention the akhirah? How many times did I mention maut, my death? And remember, Rasulullah said that the most intelligent of you is the one who mentions his death the most often. So, am I intelligent? Ask yourself this question. And then ask yourself that going by this list, which is a authentic, real-time list of what I mention, what I talk about in my life, what is truly important for me, right? What is truly important for me? Now, then you can analyze this further. You can say, well, look at the stuff in this and say, what is it that I really that I stressed about? What is it that I was really anxious about? And then ask yourself, was it really worth being anxious about that thing? Right? Was it really worth being stressed about it? Was it something that was really worth worrying about? So ask and see, if those things are really worth worrying about. Then one of the ways is, for example, see the effect of that thing going wrong. What will happen if whatever you're saying, whatever you're worried about, what will happen if that thing doesn't happen, if it goes wrong? For example, you're looking for a job. What if I can't find a job in the next 3 months? What if I can't find a job in the next 6 months? Just think about that. What is the worst case scenario? What is the worst that can happen? And then see what is the solution for that. What would you be able to do? How would you be able to deal with that? Now, interestingly, some of the things, for example, if I, as I mentioned, if I lose my job, if I can't find another job, what if somebody close to me dies? What if the government in my country changes and a government that is hostile to me and my kind, if that government comes to power? What if I fail my career exams? What if I fall sick with something incurable? For example, say if I get COVID, what will happen? Now, do this. Think about this. Think about everything that can go wrong. Right? Just fantasize. Everything that can go wrong, and literally sort of frighten yourself into next week, and then ask the question: if all of these things go wrong, uh, how long will the effect of that last? How long will the effect of that last? And then, of course, analyze for yourself and say that first of all, the chances of all of these things going wrong at once, the chances of that happening, everything together at once, is literally zero. Right? It's literally zero. It can't happen. So you will have only some of these things possibly going wrong. And if that happens, the effect of that, how long will it last? In some cases, it might last a few months. In some cases, it might last a few years. In some cases, it will last, and in every single case, it will end when you end. Right? When you die, that effect is gone. Whatever it was. Incurable disease is there until when? Until I die. After that, as I say, there is no cure for cancer except death. Once somebody dies, the cancer dies with him. So the question is that how long will that effect last? And then ask yourself another question. That question is, if I land up before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if Allah is not pleased with me, how long will the consequences of that last? Right? How long will the consequences of that last? So one is, if the world is not pleased with me, somebody doesn't like what I do, somebody doesn't like me as a person, whatever, how long will the effect of that last? And the second one is that how long will the effect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not being pleased with me, how long will that effect last? These are two questions that I want you to think about and um, and then analyze and say, what really am I stressed about and what should I be stressed about? My brothers and sisters, we like to talk about a stress free life. Believe me, a stress free life is a fantasy, right? It's a fantasy, it doesn't exist. Every life has stress. Happiness in life is about deciding what you want to be stressed about. It is that simple, believe me. Happiness is to decide what you want to be stressed about, not to be free of stress. You will always have some stress. You can decide what you want to be stressed about. You cannot get rid of stress, but you can decide what is worth uh, being stressed about. Now, that's why I first asked you to examine what stresses you the most. Now, the Sahaba were stressed. I mean, there's no such thing as a stress-free life for anyone who's intelligent. I mean, I think the only people who can live a stress-free life are people who are extremely stupid because they're incapable of conceptualizing anything, they're incapable of foreseeing anything, and they live like animals, just for the moment. So I get enough food. I go. It's like I like animals or babies, for example. A baby, as long as the baby is not hungry and as long as the baby is not wet, that baby is content, right? So as long as you're feeding the baby on time and you clean it up and make sure it's dry and warm, that baby has no stress in life. But that's the life of an animal. Right? The baby is at that point an animal, really. I mean, there's no intelligence, there's no thinking, there's no trying to foresee the future, or foresee. I don't mean it like some fortune teller. I mean, foresee in the sense of looking at the future from a positive angle and saying, what is it that I can do to affect my life positively? There's none of that that a baby has. So a baby has a stress-free life, but any intelligent adult is going to have a life which will have some thought in it. It will have some purpose to it. There is a possibility of success, the possibility of failure, and so on. So therefore, that life will have some level of stress. The Sahaba were stressed. The Sahaba were stressed. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was so stressed that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala revealed Quran about this. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said, فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاقِعُ نَفْسَكَ. Are you going to literally, destroy yourself or harm yourself because of your stress, that people are not, they don't believe you, that they don't follow you, right? So this was the stress of the Nabi alayhi salam. The Sahaba were stressed, the great scholars were stressed, all the Anbiya were stressed. The question to ask is, what were they stressed about? Right? What were they stressed about? And that's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the solution for stress. Where He said, Jalla Jalaluhu, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that verily, in the dhikr of Allah, in the remembrance of Allah, there is itminan of the qalb. There is peace of mind. There is actually peace of mind is the correct translation for itminan al qalb, or freedom from stress. You can call it that. Now that's because the one who's focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seeks to please Him over and above everyone and everything else, in doing so, the person frees himself from the only matter which should produce stress in ourselves, which is, what will happen if I meet Allah and He is displeased with me? So when the person is focused on pleasing Allah, then this is the real cause of stress, which is, what will happen if I meet Allah in a state where Allah is displeased? This question is answered. This anxiety is taken care of. Because if I am making the effort to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Huwa Rahman Rahim, we have every hope that as long as we make the effort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive our sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive the omissions that we make. And this is the in line with this. The dalil for this is that is a Qudsi where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that when a person goes towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala walking, Allah comes towards him running. When he goes towards him, the hand span, the width of a hand span, Allah comes to him the width of the arm, the length of the arm. So this is we know this from the hadith. So therefore, we know that if we make the effort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inshallah reward us. So when the person is only worrying about that Allah should be pleased with me, then he will find that his life becomes stress-free in that context. Second thing is that a person who is concerned about the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also constantly aware of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his life. And when you are aware of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life, the benefit of that is that it gives you huge confidence. As in the words of Sheikh Saadi Rahmatullah alayhi, Saadi alayhi rahmah, he said, Kar ma darkar ma azar ma, kar saze ma ba fikre kar ma. He said, why should I be concerned about solving my problems? Because the problem solver, the one who really solves problems, who has the power to solve problems, he is concerned about solving my problems. This translation doesn't do justice to the share, but he said, "Kare ma, darkare ma, azare ma, kar saze ma, kar saz, जो काम के बनाने वाला है, कार साजे मा, बफिक्रे कारे मा, काम का बनाने वाला जब मेरे काम के बनाने की फिक्र में लगा हुआ है, तो मैं अपने काम के बनाने की फिक्र क्यों करूं? मुझे तो सिर्फ ये फिक्र होनी चाहिए कि अल्लाह ताला मुझसे राजी हो जाए." So this is the understanding of that. Now, my brothers and sisters, now some of you may be thinking, but what about people? What about society? What about career and conditions in the world and so on? How can I live my whole life in a state of pain? And the answer is there is no need to live your life in a state of pain. Nobody is talking about living your life in a state of pain. We are saying that if you are focused on pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your life, everything in your life will fall into place. You will live a life full of happiness, full of peace, full of harmony, full of success, and inshallah your akhirat will also become that way, will also become full of success. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they gave us the answer. Allah said, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah said, therefore, remember me and I will remember you. And be grateful to me and never be ungrateful. O you who believe, seek help in patience and salah. Truly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the sabirin. Allah is with the people who are patient. My brothers and sisters, the way to real influence and power and popularity is to strengthen and straighten our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to repeat that. The way to real influence and power and popularity is to straighten and strengthen our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When that happens, everything else will automatically fall into place. Fix one connection and every other connection will fix itself. Ignore that one connection and you will go mad trying to fix a million connections and nothing will work. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, be grateful and do not be ungrateful. You remember me, I will remember you. Think about that. What is the context? What is the meaning? What is the value of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembering you on His arsh? The hadith, which is an explanation of this ayat in a way, is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the hadith Qudsi, but my slave remembers me within himself, I remember him in myself. When he remembers me alone by himself, I remember him in the same way, alone by myself. When my slave remembers me in company, I remember him in a company which is better than his. Right? So this is the beauty. And if Allah is remembering you, just think about that. Try to get this feeling as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is remembering you, then what is the value of that? What does that do in terms of popularity and success in the world and influence and protection from harm and so on? So all the stuff you're worried about. How can anybody harm somebody whose name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking, who Allah is remembering? How can that person be unsuccessful? How can that person become unpopular or lose significance or lose value? How is it possible? It cannot happen. Because if Allah is with you, then there is nothing in the world which can stand in your way. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I talked about, I said this, one connection. वो एक सजदा जिसे तू गिरा समझता है, हजार सजदों से देता है आदमी को नजात. Allama Iqbal rahmatullah said that one sujood, one sajda which you think is very difficult and expensive, it frees you from 1,000 sujood. It frees you from 1,000 sujood because when you make that one sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then everything in the world falls into place. Then you don't have to please anybody. Everything will be pleased because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause them to be pleased. We know the hadith of where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a person, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Jibreel alayhi salam and tells him, I love so and so. And this by name, Allah is taking your name. I love so and so. And you also love that person. So Jibreel alayhi salam is given this hukum to say you love this person. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Jibreel alayhi salam then announces in the heavens that Allah loves this person, this man or this woman, and all of you also love that person. So the inhabitants of the heavens, the malaika in the heavens, they love that person, and love and popularity and izzah for that person and affection for that person is established in the hearts of the people on the earth. So this is the route. I mean, the simplest route. Instead of running around ragged, trying to please a million people, please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everybody else automatically will be will become pleased with you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned these ayat. I mean, my favorite ayat. I keep on reciting them every time. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَّهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and whosoever fears Allah and keeps his duty, has taqwa, whoever has taqwa, Allah will make a way for him to get him out of every difficulty. Today we are talking about COVID and this and that. They're worried about the economy, worried about jobs. What must we do? Straighten our lives. Become muttaqeen. Try, focus our lives and say, how can I please Allah? Whatever I was doing in my life which was displeasing to Allah or which could have been displeasing to Allah, let me stop doing it immediately. No delay. Immediately. If I was borrowing on interest, get rid of that. If I was lying and cheating, get rid of that. If I was abusing my wife or husband, get rid of that. If I was making ghiba, slander, backbiting people, get rid of that. Ensure that you do not do anything which can displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Get rid of that. Because only if you do that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love that person. And then Allah said, if you do that, because then you become muttaqi, then Allah said, then I will extract you from your difficulty. So whatever you were afraid of, this will disappear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take you out of that. Conditions may not change, but they will not affect you adversely. This is the important thing to remember. And then Allah said that Allah will then provide him from sources he could not imagine. Think about this. We are so stuck to the material world that we look for solutions also only in the material world. We do not see and we do not understand that solutions can be that real solutions are really the hukum and ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not only not only, but also these are things which are not in the material world. These things are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this ability, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will solve those problems for us. So therefore we need to be sure about what we are doing. So I remind myself and you, let us think about that and say, how do we straighten our lives? So Allah said that Allah will provide him from sources he cannot imagine. Now we think of a material world and we say, what will happen, this will happen, that will happen, vaccine for COVID and stuff for the economic, helping us in the economic problems. But Allah said, I will provide him from sources that he cannot imagine. Then even more, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ, the one who has tawakkul on me, the one who has complete and total faith and trust in me, I will become sufficient for that person. Allah will become sufficient for that person. Imagine, Allah is not even saying, I will give him this or that. Allah is saying, Allah will become sufficient for you. Whatever you need, Allah will be there for that. What is the biggest need we have? The biggest need we have is forgiveness for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The biggest need we have is Jannah. And Allah says, I will become sufficient. Sufficient where and when? Until we exist. In this life, in the next life. In the qabr, I am going into the grave. I will have issues there, potential problems. Who is there for me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens to my problems? On the day of judgment, I am going before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah said, I will become sufficient for you. Allah, alhamdulillah. For that, what must you do? What must I do? Become muttaqi. Become concerned about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over and above every other concern. I already mentioned to you the hadith of what happens when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves somebody. The hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, which is in Sahih Bukhari. My brothers and sisters, let us look at our lives and see what we are paying to get what. Believe me, this life is a transaction. To get something, you have to give something. Right? Everything has a price. There's no free lunches, as they say. So let us look at what am I giving to get what. And then ask yourself, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Return on investment, we do this in financial accounting and so on. Any investment, we say, what is the ROI? What is how much return on the investment am I getting? And what is the best investment? The best investment is the one on which the ROI is highest. So the return on the investment is highest, so that's the best investment. So what is the return on investment as assessed in terms of quantum and duration? For example, if I sell my house and I use that money to go on a world cruise, on a luxury cruise liner, I would return with some nice photos and some warm memories and maybe some amazing experiences and be homeless because I sold my house. I sold the house and I went off on this cruise. And when I come back, I had a nice experience, nice holiday, but I am homeless. Now, what would you call that return on investment? Right? What would you call that return on investment? Would you call it investment? Would you say that, you're a very smart guy, you sold your house and you went on this cruise, wow, fantastic, what a beautiful experience you must have had, and so on and so on, and now you're homeless on the street. Yeah, good luck for you, right? I'm trying to find a nice doorway somewhere to sleep tonight. Yeah, imagine that. And here's the house owner sleeping in a doorway because he sold the house and went on a cruise. So, what kind of investment is that? What kind of return is that? On the other hand, if I sell my house and I buy two shops and I rent them out and I move into an apartment on rent and I live off the income, what would you call that return on investment? So I used to work, and every day I have to go to work, and maybe sometimes it's difficult and so on and so forth. Or I may still go to work, but now what I have is I have a house to live in comfortably, and I'm getting an income without me necessarily having to go to work every day. And if I'm going to work every day, also, Alhamdulillah, this is a supplementary income. Now, what would you call that kind of return on investment? So here is the guy who sold his house and went on a cruise. Here's the guy who sold his house, bought two shops, and the rest of it. Now, who is the more intelligent person? Now, do any permutations and combinations on this? Sell house, buy gold, buy stocks, whatnot. What would you call that return vis-a-vis sell house, go on a cruise? Now, let's see how this works with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called this life itself a business. He called it a transaction. He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min adhabin alim. He said, oh, you believe, shall I guide you to a business that will save you from a painful torment? Now, what is the return on that investment? Man ja'a bil hasanati falahu ashru amthaliha. وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ فَلَا يُجْزَى إِلَّا مِثْلَهَا وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. Allah said, whoever brings one good deed of obedience to Allah shall have 10 times the like thereof to his or her credit. And whoever brings one evil deed, which is disobedience to Allah, shall have only the recompense of that like thereof. And they will not be wronged. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that 1:10, that's 1,000%. This is the return on the investment that is done to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now think about that. What is the one word for obedience to Allah? And what is the guarantee that whatever it is that I am doing is obedience to Allah and will earn His pleasure? What's that one word? What's the one thing that if you say, I do this, I am home and dry, I don't have to worry? What is that? That is called the sunnah. That is called the sunnah, right? So I remind myself and you, let us think about it in this context and try to improve this in our lives. Now, my brothers and sisters, I want you to, we'll look at something more about the explanation on ROI and so on in the next session, inshallah. But for the moment, I want you to give this thought and say that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about a return on the investment, what is my investment with Allah? Because remember, no matter how big the percentage of return may be, the absolute amount you get will be in relation to the amount you invest. Even if it is 1,000%, so you're getting 1:10, 10 times. Somebody invests 1 rupee, he's still got only 10 rupees. 10 rupees is really, what's 10 rupees? What doesn't buy you a cup of tea. But somebody who invests $1 million gets $10 million. The percentage is the same. What made a difference is how much did we invest, quantum of investment. And the question to ask ourselves is, what is the quantum of my investment in my akhirah? Because on that will be based the return that I get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The absolute return. Absolute return. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to live Islam and to fill our lives with the barakah of living Islam. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us and to enable us to live a life which pleases Him and to take us in a state where He is pleased with us. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك